Talking Buckeyes with all of you here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by on a Wednesday. So lock it in for the rest of the football season. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time with, of course, Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, 247 Sports, Tony Girdman. It's BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. Yes. Appreciate you guys being here as always. 336 times. That's the count. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. And we will preview the Ohio game, Ohio U. For all those college football fans that have been gone astray in some way for either particularly rooting for a certain team or maybe catching that same vibe, this is Ohio that Ohio State is playing this year. They're playing Ohio this week. It is Ohio State versus Ohio. So I don't know how you're going to size up that matchup, Ohio versus Ohio. Tony, I don't know. I'm sure you've come across this, for the last 20 plus years or whatever it's been.
Well, Brady Hoke made it popular again to call Ohio State Ohio, which did not please the Ohio State fans. Even last week, going through Grambling State, like I was looking to see what is the preferred reference, and every time I looked on the Grambling State game notes, they would always write Grambling State. So I tried to refer to them as Grambling State as much as I could, thinking of Ohio State and Ohio and the references there.
Yeah, it's I put Ohio U in some of our stories, and our staff corrected me and said it's just refer to them as Ohio. So that's how they're referred to themselves, I think, in some of their releases as well. So it is what it is. The neat thing about this game is Ohio is coming in off a huge win over West Virginia at home. They beat Iowa State down there in Athens a couple of years ago. So they're used to playing top, Power 4 teams. They played Rutgers in their opener out at Rutgers and came back from down 31-14 and ended up losing the game 34-31. Gave Rutgers one heck of a game. They outgained both Rutgers and West Virginia in total offense. And against West Virginia, they outrushed them something like 172-65, something like that. Now, it has to be noted that Rich Rodriguez is taking the same approach that he took when he went to Michigan, which is apparently don't care whether we win or lose. Don't care if we had players who could help us play better. They don't fit our offense, and so we're not going to do that. And, so it looks like it's going to be a very, very difficult year in Rich Rod's return to West Virginia. Sorry to see that. But at any rate, Tony, you know this. Everybody in Central Ohio has a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, somebody who either went to or graduated from Ohio State or went to or graduated from Ohio University or both. So, it's kind of a closed fraternity here in Central Ohio that, you have people on both sides of this, call it rivalry, both sides of this matchup. But there's at least a little bit of intrigue because Ohio University is coming in off, a MAC championship last year. And now it went over West Virginia. So to me, they're coming in with some momentum, it appears.
I still think the 34-point line just seems high to me.
I agree.
Based on the way that Ohio has started and what they've already been able to do, nearly with 2 wins against Power 4 opponents. I find that very respectable, even though, as you said, West Virginia is what it is. But 34 points just seems like a lot.
I was actually going to say they must be a really good MAC team. If they're only I thought it was a 31.5 point.
Whatever
underdog.
it is.
That's what I had seen. I thought, wow, it's only 31.5. About a third of the Big Ten is usually a 30-point underdog against Ohio State. Shoot, Iowa was winning 10 games and coming to Columbus as 30-point underdogs. So I figured that was quite a bit of respect. And with that, we'll bring in our guest just to get the Ohio analysis in here right out of the gate. We got Steve Hellwick stopping by from Underdog Dynasty, Hustle Belt, SB Nation across the board. Steve, we appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
Yes, Parker Navarro and Ohio. I caught some of the game against Rutgers, 34-31. Put a scare in Greg Schiano. And then again, as we just mentioned, the win against West Virginia is just a 3-point underdog. And I thought I was being clever saying, you know what, West Virginia's got to have better athletes. I'll cover. They'll cover the 3 and win by a 10 or whatever. But nope, Ohio pulls it off as they did against Iowa State a couple weeks ago. So this is a pretty accomplished team.
Yeah, and Big 12 teams should really stop going into Peden Stadium. Ohio's 4-1 in their last 5 against the Big 12. 3 of those wins at Peden Stadium over Kansas, Iowa State, and West Virginia over that span. But yeah, this is a good Ohio team, and it's not a similar Ohio team necessarily to the one last year. They lost a head coach, they lost a lot of the coaching staff, and they lost a good amount of the on-field personnel. But one thing that does return to inspire confidence in this Ohio team is Parker Navarro, who's been a long-time quarterback. He waited his turn. He backed up Dylan Gabriel at UCF. He backed up Curtis Rourke at Ohio. And he got his turn last year and did very well with it. Over 1,000 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns on the ground. And he was a pretty decent passer. But this year, I noticed week 1 in the Rutgers game that he just took leaps and bounds as a passer. He was making throws that he was not able to make during that 2024 MAC champion season. And right away, I realized when all these other MAC teams were getting shut out in week 1, I realized, Ohio's offense is a different level than the rest of the MAC this year. So it was nice to see Parker Navarro's development there as a passer. Now, he brought, I would say, his C or D game to West Virginia, and they still were able to win that game. There was a span where Ohio threw 3 interceptions on 3 straight possessions, and West Virginia turned those 3 possessions into 3 straight 3-and-outs for -7 yards. So Ohio's defense was the one that controlled that West Virginia win, which was good to see because week 1, Rutgers was just thrown all over Ohio. So Ohio made a good week 1 to week 2 adjustment, which should inspire some confidence going forward.
Was there any common denominator in the interceptions? Because I haven't watched the highlights yet. Anything that was clear that he should not have been doing, or were these tipped passes, or what was it about?
They weren't good passes. They were kind of late throws, more toward the boundary that West Virginia was just picking off. And I think it's just when one interception hits, it's just a wave hits for him. I mean, last year he had 13 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, which isn't really a ratio you'd see of an elite starting quarterback. Parker Navarro is someone who I feel like the eye test actually looks better than the stats when you're watching him pass. I mean, he's at 4 touchdowns, 3 picks this year, which is not a ratio a starting quarterback would want. But if you saw some of those throws that he made in that Rutgers game, you realize he's a lot better in that department than he was a year ago.
It feels like, Steve, if I can ask that, I mean, everything offensively for them kind of flows through him. Mm-hmm. They have a decent enough running back with Bangura and, a couple of the wide receivers, Darte and Hendricks, I think.
Mm-hmm. Hendricks is the guy now. Last year, Coleman Owen was like the overwhelming number 1 receiver. This year, it's going to be Chase Hendricks. That was established first possession against Rutgers. Hendricks had multiple long catches on that drive, and you realize he's going to be first team All-MAC wideout this year.
Yeah, really like what I saw out of him. He had a big game against West Virginia, I think over 100 yards. So somebody's calling my wife's phone here, and I can't get it to there. To me, when I watched the 20-minute version of Ohio versus West Virginia, what was notable to me is when the play ends and everybody's in a pile up and they're standing up, the big bodies for West Virginia did not tower over or seem to dwarf the big bodies from Ohio. It felt like, man, these two teams look like they're from the same league. Whereas a lot of times with the MAC teams, you'll see, a Big Ten team's got 2 or 3 guys that are just gargantuan, and OU doesn't, is countering with like a 250-pound guy. It just looks and seems to me like they've got, I don't want to say a Big Ten caliber offensive or defensive line, but I think if you picked up this Ohio University team and put them in the Big Ten, they'd probably win 2 or 3 games, depending on their schedule, who they play, maybe 4. I don't even know. I mean, UCLA, they would kick the shit out of UCLA. I don't have any doubt about that. And Northwestern's not any good either. So there's two right there if they're on their schedule. But they already played Rutgers. It was a virtual tie. Rutgers wins by 3 at home. I mean, that's the advantage for playing the game on your home field. So they're just as good as probably 6 or 7 of the teams in the Big Ten, in my opinion.
Interestingly enough, they have one of the smallest offensive lines in the MAC. Only one player, I think it's Davion Witherspoon, is above 300 pounds in the starting 5 on Ohio's lineup. So that was one thing. And their line wasn't really that big last year. They have 4 new starters on that offensive line. That was one thing I noticed, like in that MAC championship against Miami, Ohio, was Miami, Ohio brings the 6'6" to 6'8", 315, 320-pound guys. Ohio is more of a leaner offensive line. And it's a quick offensive line, which is one thing that Ohio does really well, but they're good at getting those blocks for Parker Navarro when he's on design runs and when he's scrambling out of the pocket, which is such a huge element of their offense. So many Ohio drives, you'll see the stat, like how many yards they have on this drive and how many yards Parker Navarro's accounted for is either a passer or a rusher, because he is their offense and he does so much of it. Now having C.A. Bangura back, who was a former Ohio running back who made his way back to Athens through the transfer portal. That's a big lift, as he was a 1,000-yard back before, and Ohio needs a good running back alongside Navarro for this offense to really work. So that was a good transfer portal addition, but Navarro still is the heart and soul of the offense. He's everything to them.
What kind of receiver is Hendricks? Is he outside? Is he inside? Like I said, I haven't been able to watch yet.
He's an outside receiver, and he's somebody who's been able to make some plays downfield so far. He has a good route profile. Like, he runs a lot of different routes, and I mean, you'll find him on hitches, you'll find him deeper on posts and all of that. They've had him, I think they have lined him up in the slot sometimes. I think one of those touchdowns against West Virginia was a deep ball out of the slot with right before halftime. So he burned West Virginia on that play a couple times, just a straight go route aligned in the slot, but they'll put him out on the boundary too a lot.
So he's a guy that they trust to move around, and he can handle all of those different positions.
Yes.
Defensively, they gave up the 34 points to Rutgers, but they didn't let West Virginia get anything accomplished, as you kind of alluded to, those three and outs after each of those interceptions. And they had some guys, Adonis Williams at safety and 15 Anas Luqman. I don't know how you pronounce either of those names. ANASLUQMAN, 6'4", 245-pound junior defensive lineman. I mean, they look like men out there playing against West Virginia, making plays. And I was very impressed with how hard they hit. Their defense was on point, I thought, against West Virginia. Maybe not as good against Rutgers, but, first game with new lineup and everything else. Did the defensive coordinator stay the same, or did he go with Coach Alban to Charlotte, or did he go somewhere else?
Well, they had 2 defensive coordinators. They had Nate Fannis, who went to Charlotte, and then the other co-defensive coordinator, John Hauser, actually stayed at Ohio, which is big because Ohio's defense has been part of this 3-year run of 10-win seasons. It's been the defense that's produced that. Ohio has had a top 12 scoring defense 2 years in a row. They've had a top 8 run defense 2 years in a row. So having Hauser, somebody with some continuity on the defensive staff, is huge, even though they lost a lot of the talent that they had on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I would say the secondary is the strength of the defense, even though it didn't look like it against Rutgers. Tank Pearson, very established cornerback there, and that safety tandem of Adonis Williams and DJ Walker is as good as you'll see in the MAC. DJ Walker is just a redshirt sophomore at this point, had a breakout season last year. He's one of those names that was getting on all those preseason watch lists. And Ohio, their tackling ability against West Virginia was excellent, where the offense kept trying to give the game away, but Ohio was very sound in their tackling. West Virginia only averaged 2.6 yards a carry. They weren't really able to complete too many explosive passing plays. So Ohio had a good all-around defensive performance, looking like the Ohio of years past. When Iowa State came to Peden Stadium in 2023, that was a 10-7 ball game. Those are the types of games Ohio Bobcats can win, are when nobody's scoring and it's just a war of attrition.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how, last week Ohio State had no resistance at all from Grambling. I mean, they had 620 yards or whatever it was, total offense, 70 points, although one of them was a defensive touchdown. Still 9 touchdowns on offense. And I want to see how, Ohio State's passing game attacks the OU defense, and which is rare to say that with a matchup with a MAC team. But I agree. I think their secondary seems to be pretty good, and I want to see, obviously the quarterback Julian Sayin was a completion machine this past week. He hit his first 16 passes for Ohio State against Grambling. I mean, that's hard to do in full pads just in the Wednesday morning walkthrough. I mean, that is to have 16 passes go, and none of his passes all day hit the ground because the one he didn't complete was intercepted. So that's kind of a crazy stat for him. But I think he's going to be tested a little bit, and you got to, against good coverage defensive backs, you've got to put the ball in precise spots. And so far through 2 starts, that's what Julian Sayin has kind of excelled at.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked good so far, although it's hard to gauge Ohio State right now because they played probably a top 5 team in the country and then another team that's probably worse than all 136 FBS teams. So it's definitely a different challenge. And now you play somebody that, I mean, right now is probably in my 40s, 50s in my ranking of 1 through 136. So very different opponent than the ones that they've previously played. But yeah, Julian Sayin, good step into the role. But what I think Ohio State's going to be able to win is this one on a defensive effort. Ohio only scored 17 points last week against West Virginia. And the way Ohio State's defense looked in their first 2 games, allowing 7 points, stopping Texas on all those 4th and short situations, I mean, it just inspires confidence because Ohio State's defense lost, 8 starters last year?
Yeah.
And just to see them reload, especially on the defensive line, reload that entire defensive line and look as dynamic and as much of a juggernaut as they've looked, it's really impressive.
What kind of pace does Ohio play with? Because you see the Rutgers game, and they had 8 possessions. Both teams had 8 possessions. And then the West Virginia game, both teams had 13 possessions. I assume the Rutgers game is more the result of that's how Rutgers plays. And I guess Rich Rod is maybe moving things a little bit more quickly with his tempo. Is Ohio, are they just happy to, shorten the game and run the clock and just take as few possessions as possible and limit the opponent's possessions as well in doing that right now?
It's more of a moderate tempo, but I would say against Ohio State, that's definitely the strategy, especially because they can run the ball with Parker Navarro and C.A. Bangura. So I do think that you always want to shorten possessions when you're going in somewhere as 31.5-point underdogs. Although I do think that spread's high. Would Ohio State be 31.5-point favorites against West Virginia? I mean, they could win by that amount, but I don't know. That felt like a high spread to me, but I still think that Ohio is going to try to limit the possession, see the amount of success they can get on their run game, try to run to the outsides because running up the gut has not worked on Ohio State at all this year.
No doubt. Were you at the game this past week in Athens by any chance?
No, I've done a few Ohio games before. I've done them at Penn State, San Diego State, a few bowl games, but I have not actually been to Athens, Ohio before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that they had just an outpouring of fans just supporting them, outpouring of support. And I just think about whether that win emboldens at least a few people on the OU side to come up to Columbus this week, or, obviously there's OU alums all around Central Hall, all around the state, whether that emboldens them to come to Columbus and spend the day hanging out, because I think it'll be a fun all-day event for the Ohio people and the Ohio State people to commingle and talk football and everything else and watch the other games. And then 7 o'clock, I mean, Ohio State used to have night games with like USC and Texas and Penn State. And in recent years, it's been Akron and Western Michigan, which were like complete non-events. They beat Western Michigan 56-0 last year in a night game. And you know, I guess the hope is that this one will be a little bit more entertaining, a little bit, you know, on one hand, Ohio State fans want to be entertained. On the other hand, they want to beat everybody 78-0. And if they don't, they want to know why they didn't. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ohio fans are going. That was the sellout crowd at Peden Stadium, as electrifying as I've ever seen it, and I do think that 31 wins in the last 3 seasons is really going to help those Ohio fans. Kind of fall in love with Ohio football. Last December, that was their first MAC championship since 1968. As good as this program was under Frank Solich, it was like some demon they couldn't escape was the MAC championship drought. And they finally did it in 38-3 fashion last year, won their bowl game. So they're riding high on confidence. And that Rutgers win could have easily been that Rutgers game could have easily been a win for them. They had a defensive holding call on a third down, which I can't believe they threw that flag. I thought Parker Navarro was about to get that ball back, get the game-winning touchdown possession, and turn a 31-14 deficit into a 38-34 win.
Steve, what I didn't understand watching the game was ESPN or whoever had the game never went back and showed the flag. Like this was what, to me, I don't recall seeing. And to me, you got to do that because that changed the entire end of the game. I mean, maybe it was Big Ten Network had it.
Yeah, it was either FS1 or Big Ten Network.
And I just don't understand why. Yeah, it wouldn't have been ESPN at Rutgers. My apology, but I just don't understand what that penalty was. It was 3rd and long, and it was a total bailout.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was.
Just, okay, Rutgers, you can keep the ball. You know,
put them in the formation.
That's what it felt like with a Big Ten crew calling the game. It's like, geez, you know, give them a chance for God's sake to try and win the game. I mean, they deserved it.
Yeah, that was a brutal call to see there. One other storyline that we have not addressed yet is this is the first meeting between Brutus the Buckeye and Rufus the Bobcat since 2010, which I know ESPN did a really good story on that in 2020 at the 10-year anniversary of Rufus, who was set on beating up the Buckeye, and that was the only reason he was still the mascot. So that'll be a fun little thing to watch on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't suppose we'll have that problem again. I think, as my memory serves, is the person who was serving as the Rufus wasn't even a student at that point. He was a guy from Nelsonville, I think, is what I remember, which is a little town right on the way down to Athens on Route 33. Anybody coming up for the game, please be aware they will give you a ticket if you're going above the posted speed limit on Route 33 between Athens and Columbus. But at any rate, the funny story about this is my brother-in-law, his name's Brett, and he was helping us out back in 2010 at Bucknuts. He had a camera set. He'd bring his video camera, and he'd take pregame video and then take pictures during the game and all this stuff. And it's his video that has been replayed time and time and time again. He is at the end of the field and the Ohio State tunnel is coming toward him. And he has the Rufus running straight out on a beeline to go harass Brutus. And he kind of whiffs. Rufus whiffs on the first attempt as Brutus is hitting him at about the 25-yard line. Then Brutus continues into the end zone, and Rufus has, great awareness and great vision and great track down speed and goes down there and makes a form tackle on Brutus in the end zone. And Brutus kind of got up like, hey, man, what the hell's going on here? And then you see one of the security guys walk over and send Rufus on his way to the what would that have been? The northeast corner of the field. Like you need to go to your side, bro. You're done. So yeah, that was quite a moment.
I suggest that they ban him from the stadium. Frankly, if Ohio State's going to get into the habit of banning people, he should be the next one. But I did see Jared Smalley from Channel 4 here is going to have a story today, talking both with the Brutus at the time and the Rufus at the time, and reminiscing about times gone past.
Now, that was not the game that Ohio gave the Buckeyes a bit of a scare there for a little while, was it?
There was a game in 1999. Ohio State kicked a field goal up 3-0, and Ohio drove straight down the field. And on like second and third and goal at the 1 yard line, they did something really exotic. They took the snap from under center, they handed the ball off to the running back, and he went straight over right guard, touchdown, which, Ohio State up until 1999 had been one of the best teams in college football the previous 5 or 6 years. And you would have thought, no way in hell is a MAC team going to line up and run the ball directly at Ohio State on the goal line and score. But that Ohio University team did. So, yeah, that was but that one eventually ended up 40-16.
Yeah, the 2008 one was 26-14. That was a little closer than it should have been. But that's also with a true freshman quarterback at that point, although that was still Beckman starting at that point.
I believe so. That's the game I'm thinking of. That was the week before USC, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was 14-12 at one point in that game.
Going into the fourth quarter.
Woof.
Yeah, as our friend Noon would say, woof.
Well, Steve, we appreciate you being here. Anything else for us, Steve, before he takes off?
I can't really think of anything. I know that there was Pat McAfee has been all over Ohio University this week because they beat his Mountaineers and been very conciliatory about the whole thing, and even made the comment that, you figure Ohio State's going to beat them. But if they go and run the table the rest of the way and end up 11-2, win the MAC 11-2, and there's no clear team coming out of the American or the Mountain West that or the Sun Belt, that Ohio University could be the Group of 5 representative in the college football playoff. And I don't think that's, based on what I've seen, I don't think that's entirely out of line to say that.
Well, I think a good season from Rutgers.
A lot of football to be played, though. Yeah,
Rutgers looks pretty good. I mean,
yeah.
They've had winning seasons the past 2 years. They beat Miami in that Pinstripe Bowl. Then last year they should have beat Kansas State in that bowl game there. But Rutgers looks improved, and that needs to be a good win over time. But if I would say that the 5 conferences that get those 5 automatic bids right now, I'd say SEC, Big Ten, ACC probably. And then I'd probably throw – the Big 12 has so much parity, but I still think somebody from the Big 12 is going to make the playoffs. I know that was a topic of conversation last November. They're like, oh, shoot, could both Tulane and Boise State sneak in over a Big 12 team? And then Tulane kind of lost, and that took care of that. But I think the Big 12 gets in. And then the 5th conference, I would say, is probably going to be the American. Other than Army's lost to an FCS program, the American has had such a great non-conference season. You've seen South Florida dominating Boise State, beating Florida. You've seen Tulane holding Northwestern to 3 points. The Navy's still a good team. Memphis, a lot of transfers. I feel like whoever comes out of the American is going to be maybe a 12-1 team at that point, and probably have that advantage over any 2-loss Ohio team.
Yeah, USF, is going to, has a tough one with Miami. And for Ohio to get in ahead of USF, USF would probably have to lose at least 3 games, I would think. So if we figure Miami will be 1, they'd have to go out and lose at least 2 more games probably to fall behind OU in that pecking order of conference champ, for that automatic conference champion berth. But, interesting to talk about.
You have to win the conference championship first. It's a crazy thing. But the one advantage Ohio has, the bottom of the MAC is absolutely terrible this year. As bad as I've seen it. I was doing my power rankings. There's 13 teams in there. Kent State, who hasn't won an FBS game in 1,020 days, I think it is now. I have them as 9th. That's how bad Eastern Michigan, Ball State, Akron, and UMass are this year. So there are going to be a lot of free wins you get in the MAC. Anyone except for Ohio, Toledo, and maybe like a Miami or Bowling Green, a free win in the MAC right now.
Yeah. Crazy.
And here I was just thinking Nebraska was just that good that they beat Akron 68.
No.
I just thought,
No.
yeah, this must be just
Nebraska ain't out of the woods yet. As
Okay.
much as we want to make them back to what they were in 1978 or 1982 or whatever, they're not quite back there yet.
Since he outplayed them, since he should have won that game.
And that's after Nebraska. I say Kansas because it was in Kansas City. After Nebraska had played a decent enough first half, but Cincinnati just in that second half was, lights out, did everything but win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, you can catch Steve's work at Hustle Belt and also Underdog Dynasty. Steve, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Steve has quite a few teams to cover, so he did a nice job diving into OU in particular for us.
Yes, he did. And great hearing. As I said, this is a fun game. I mean, there's the small bit of intrigue here. And Ohio State does need a challenge after last week. They need now. What was great about last week was 100 guys got to play, and I'm exaggerating, probably not quite 100, but the first three offensive lines all saw appreciable action in that game. So a lot of people showed up to work on Sunday with a smile on their face because they got to do something meaningful in a real game on Saturday. And that only helps the morale of the team, as you go forward. But this is the last, dress rehearsal. And it's funny to say that after you've already played Texas, supposedly one of the top teams in the country. So you already have a pretty good idea of what your team is all about. But you really need to cinch in a lot of things here in this game because then you have an off week. And then you're going to go play Washington, which has looked really good so far. Granted, no great competition, but looked pretty good so far in its first two games. They're off this week. Then they go and play at Washington State, I believe, next week in their Apple Cup game. And then back home to host Ohio State Big Ten opener for both of those teams, which, again, how crazy is it to say Big Ten opener? Speaking of which, how crazy is it to say – I'm kind of at a point in my life where I've stopped caring what people really think. And, maybe I should have earlier. I feel like I have some common sense ideas that make sense, but we're living in this vast sea of where nothing makes sense. And if anybody can explain to me why Michigan State a week from now is going to play an 11 p.m. Eastern time game, I think it's USC. Does that sound right? I think they're at USC next week. I know Rutgers played one last year out there. I think it was UCLA. But this is nonsensical to me. If you wanted to do something to tell the alumni and the fans of Michigan State that you are completely insignificant and you don't matter to a hill of beans, I don't know what bigger statement you could possibly make than to put a Big Ten conference game at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, I get it. If you had scheduled Wisconsin or scheduled Arizona State or Stanford for a non-conference game out there, and this did happen. Wisconsin had to play a late night game out at Arizona State one time because it was part of the Pac-12 TV package. Ohio State had to play a game in Arizona one time at 10 p.m. That was way back in 2000 because it was part of the Pac-12 package. But for your own conference, to take you and sell you down the river like this over a minuscule amount of money. I mean, I know, okay, Fox is paying all this big money. Well, they can keep the 200,000 that, split 18 ways that they're putting for this specific game at 11 p.m. This is ridiculous. They need to rework that in the next contract.
Yeah, there we see it. If I can, there's always like 14 things you have to do to clear out a message. There we go. In the previous message. So that is, the next weekend down at the bottom, Michigan State at USC. Now, of course, my head is stuck back in 1988 when they actually did play in the Rose Bowl against each other. But when I see Michigan State and USC, I think, oh, that's a pretty big game. But obviously Michigan State has much to prove, and USC as well. It's a pretty strong week. We've got the two rivalry games for the newcomers, Oregon State, and Washington State, and some other decent games. Illinois, Indiana, the one people are talking about. And then, Iowa, Rutgers got pegged for that Friday night game. Yeah, Rutgers was out at USC last year. Steve, I got to think that game did not kick off at 11 o'clock at night. That was a Friday night game. I think that was like a 9 p.m. Eastern kickoff. So they didn't even relegate Rutgers to that kind of game.
Yeah, there was a Rutgers game, I believe, one of these, maybe the first year. I don't know. But, I like Tony Petitti. He's trying to maximize value for the Big Ten with some of his ideas of these play-in games and whatever. It's just kind of like, man, just tap the brakes, and I know that we want to blame the previous Commissioner Warren for some of the byproducts of this TV deal, but this part of it came about under Petitti because these schools were added, I think, with Petitti, if I'm not right, well, maybe with Warren, I don't know, but this deal with Fox was hatched, I think, under Petitti's time. I could be wrong, but to allow this, I mean, no Eastern time zone team should play a game or start a game later than 9 p.m. Eastern time, if it's on the West Coast. And, for a Central time zone team like Nebraska to go out there and play a game at 8:30 or 9 o'clock Central time, which would be 11 o'clock Eastern time, 8 p.m. Pacific, that's not that big of a deal. But 11 p.m. it's nonsense. I mean, you're trying to grow the game. You're trying to get people involved in this. And this is the one way to turn people off, in my opinion, is to say your support of your team or that college or that team doesn't matter because we don't care. And you can't say we don't care any louder than putting a game at 11 o'clock for those people to watch a conference game at 11 o'clock. As I said, Pac-12, a little different. When I asked Tony Petitti, not necessarily about this one game, but about, the idea that East Coast teams would play late night games, he's like, well, the TV partners want to draw a rating too. So proven ratings draws like Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan would never be at 11 o'clock Eastern time because very few people would tune in to watch it. So that's good if you're Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. But sometimes Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan need to stand up and say what's right for Rutgers, Maryland, Michigan State, Indiana, and Purdue, all in the Eastern time zone, who are getting screwed entirely by this whole thing. And look, if you don't stand up and say something when something's not right, then, that's your fault. I'm probably going to write something about this as part of a column on something or the other because, and bring it up the next time we're with Petitti, because this is nonsense. This is so unnecessary. As I said, you could play a Central time zone team out there at 8:30 or 9 o'clock Central time, whatever. But to do this to an Eastern time zone team makes no sense to me.
I mean, that's part of the issue with going out west and adding four teams who you've eliminated one broadcast block for them because they can't be on at noon. And so you've eliminated that prospect from happening. So there are weeks like this where I think it's more of a novelty than a necessity because this could be a 7:30 Big Ten Network game. Is it better than a Big Ten Network game? Yes. Is that anybody's fault other than having more quality teams in the Big Ten? Like, this is a good problem to have for the Big Ten Network. I know FS1 has a game later that night, so they have to, they've got their contractually obligated Mountain West or Big 12 games or whatever. So it's like, it can't be a noon game. Could it be 3:30 perhaps? But I think this is done just to say that you can do it. Look at us. From 12 p.m. until 2 a.m, we've got Big Ten football, and I think it's a flex, and maybe it's a flip off to Michigan State fans. But once they went out west, I saw this happening, and I talked about like there are going to be days where you have this, and it's amazing. I'm not going to stay up for it. I'm not going to be able to stay up for it. Like if we were coming home from a 3:30 kick or a 7:30 kick, sure, but I don't know that I can make it from, waking up at 8 a.m. until staying up for this one until 2:30 a.m. It's unique. It's a novelty, but I don't know that you need to have this more than a couple times a year. And again, I think they're doing it just to say they did it. And will they get more ratings on Fox at 11 and Big Ten Network at 7:30? Probably. And then don't be surprised when the ratings come out, you see Fox touting highest ratings for an 11 p.m. kick ever. And it's like, well, who are you competing against?
Yeah, so a couple things here. One would be the way you just promoted it, Tony, is what I remember hearing when the deal was signed, that the Big Ten can now cover the entire day of college football from the traditional noon Eastern time kickoffs all the way through to late night games on the West Coast. We can cover, what is that, 4?
Yep.
Yeah, 4 TV broadcast windows. So they're fulfilling what I remember hearing from day one.
Big Ten After Dark is what they want to see trending. And so that's why this is. And yeah, it sucks for Michigan State fans, but how different is it than Ohio State having to be on Peacock? Like, how many people are going to miss out on the game because they don't have Peacock? How many people miss out on games because they don't have FS1? At least the majority of people have Fox, if they have anything, and they could choose to stay up a little bit later. And if they don't want to, then I guess it's not as important as they thought, as other things are. But it's a tough ask. Would Ohio State fans stay up till 11 o'clock to watch game? Hell yeah. So, I mean, they're going to do what they got to do to watch Ohio State. I assume Michigan State fans in this one are going to do what they got to do to watch Michigan State.
As Daniel says, Mark Rogers is usually doing a recap show around 2 a.m. anyway. This is true. I've kind of cut back this season, but I guess I've pushed 2 a.m. But in the past, my goodness, I'd be sitting here till 3 a.m. That aside, before I take down the screen so we can actually see Tony again, Oregon at Northwestern, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. on the West Coast. Do you have an issue with that, Steve?
Well, it's not preferable, I don't think, but 9 a.m. is at least a time when people who live in Portland, Eugene, Oregon, would typically be awake. 11 p.m. is not a time where a large percentage of people are planning on being awake. So I think there is two different things there. I think the third thing to say about that is that, folks on the West Coast are used to starting their NFL Sunday at 10 a.m., 1 p.m. Eastern time. So getting up and watching football games, on Saturdays, all the action starts at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific.
True.
They're used to watching a game. They're probably not as used to watching their team play at 9 a.m. So it is a bit of an inconvenience if you have get-togethers or, instead of, slugging beers and rum and cokes, you got to have a mimosa or a Bloody Mary, so and to go with your eggs and your bacon and all that, your hash browns. But, I like a good mimosa. That's not bad. And for a Michigan game 3 or 4 years ago, my wife's cousin, who's from California, he loves the Bloody Marys. I go, bring the Bloody Marys. We'll have a Bloody Mary. And I had one. It was really bitter. I didn't like it. So, yeah.
Didn't Oregon, Ohio State kick off at 12 p.m. in 2021?
It might have. It might have.
Didn't seem to bother them at that time.
It did not on that particular day for sure.
Nothing seems to bother Oregon right now, though, other than when coaches talk crap, and then that bothers Dan Lanning, and then he takes it out on those teams for doing so.
What was the issue? Was it a Mike Gundy thing?
Yeah,
I did not catch this.
Just Gundy talking about the way some programs can spend money.
Oh, okay.
which is kind of rich coming from the guy that is from T. Boone Pickens U.
He really picked. He really picked at him a little bit. He said two. He kind of twisted the knife. He said 2 or 3 things that he should not have said. So, he kind of went through the fourth wall there, talking about money. So,
I think Oklahoma State's on boy, they're in a bad way right now as well, and they have no talent. And I don't know how much longer their coach wants to be there. And his star has faded a great deal as well. So it's not like Mike Gundy can go and get a better job at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that any power conference team should be losing to another power conference team by 9 touchdowns. That's embarrassing. They finished off last season losing all 9 games in the conference and losing to Colorado 52-0. And that was not a great Colorado team. So, yeah, Mike Gundy has just apparently given up or not been smart enough to adjust to the NIL era, or some combination of those things.
Yep, all the above.
Doreen will let us all know that the merch here at the Voice of College Football Ohio State is first rate, so she's enjoying it. Doreen, thank you so much for posting on X and also letting us know there in the chat that you like your merch. So you get your Buckeyes merch there at vocfb.com, and you can select from about 25 teams, including Ohio State, tumblers and mugs and jackets and hats and all sorts of good stuff right there.
I want Doreen to tell us, I think she's a red coat at the games, usher. What section is she working, and how has it gone so far through the first 2 weeks, if she's worked those 2 games? I know she was at an event, one of the open practices over at the Woody Hayes Center, but Doreen should let us know in her comments there what section she's at and how has it been pretty smooth through the first 2 weeks. Looking for some interaction here.
I believe that Doreen is commenting on the merch currently about it being quality and not necessarily the red coat assignment, but
yeah,
I'm sure she'll chime in here.
Skull session only at VIP seating. I got it. Well, that frees you up to go to the game, I would say.
Speaking of the game or the scrimmage or the practice or whatever it was, I will have to hand in my Buckeye card for the week to say, no, I did not sit through that. I did not watch it. I did not watch one play when it was live. I did watch the 12 or 16 minute highlights just to watch a lot of scarlet jerseys just running down the field, without resistance. So was there any other takeaway besides 95 guys hit the field?
Well, I think the takeaway was that the second and third team held up the standard and continued to shut out, and the second team offense scored as many points as the first team offense. So those things are good to see. Just that while there is a drop off, there was not a drop off in mentality and execution. So you got the young guys got an opportunity to play. We saw Riley Pettyjohn, Bo Jackson make some plays. I think that's all good, and I think you'll continue to see more of those guys moving forward now that the Texas game is in the rear view, and you're going to need the young guys to build and build and build as the season goes on. Yeah,
Riley Pettyjohn, very impressive. I think he forced a fumble, then which I want to say Epi Satanale recovered. Then Caden McDonald forced a fumble that Riley Pettyjohn picked up and took back for a touchdown, 20-some yards. Just had a huge game. He did, and only a limited number of plays as a backup linebacker. So that was good. Julian Sane completing all those passes was good. Bo Jackson, over 100 yards rushing in his Ohio State debut, was outstanding, and had people on our message board commenting he should go straight to the head of the list at the running back position, because Peoples has really been nothing to write home about through the first 2 games, although he had like 8 carries for 59 yards this past week. Again, take it all with a grain of salt. Even Bo Jackson's 100 yards take with a bit of a grain of salt. He got outside and went up the sideline. I think if that was a Big Ten game, that would have been stopped if he had made the sideline by about the 7th or 8th yard probably, but he got loose for about 30 or 40 down the sideline. So, yeah, they're going to play against bigger, stronger, faster X's and O's in every other game the rest of the season, and we'll see how they respond to it, I guess.
Folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I would say one thing about those kind of games is probably the highest bit of entertainment value for me is to listen to both coaches before the game, during the weekly news conference, and then after the game, and how much they are going to kind of tap dance around the obvious that it's just a non-competitive situation, and still give respect where respect is due and respect the athletes. And from what I heard from both of them, maybe the Grambling coach was maybe a bit more forthright, as you would expect, but at the same time, they both acknowledged in a respectful way what the situation was.
Yeah, they both did. And even Ryan Day yesterday was like, it was not a matchup game, but, you still have to hold up to the standard. And Grambling, to their credit, played hard the entire time, but they were just way overmatched. And that's one of the reasons the Grambling coach before the game, like in his weekly media lead up, talked about this will be a great matchup between the bands.
Yeah.
And instead of,
and it was.
It was.
Mickey Joseph, the coach, was the former interim coach at Nebraska, I think when Scott Frost got fired a few years ago. And then he had to coach the final 7 or 8 games or whatever of that season with Nebraska. So he's been at this level. He knows the score. He knows what it's like. And, that's how it went for Grambling. They got their $1 million payday, and it was back to the Bayou with you. And, Ryan Dawes had a question there about Washington. They already – a network, NBC, I think, has already selected, I want to say Michigan, Nebraska or something like that as a night game that week of the Ohio State-Washington game, September the 27th. And it can't be a noon game on Fox because of it'd be at 9 a.m. local time out there. So I can tell you that CBS is looking at that as its number one selection, following, for that weekend, and it'll be a 3:30 game almost certainly on CBS that September the 27th. So middle of the day here and early out on the West Coast.
Yeah, because that's Oregon Penn State is the night game that week.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Oregon Penn State. Yeah, I'm getting all my weeks confused.
Yeah, so almost certainly a 3:30 or 4 o'clock kick or whatever. And then to the super chat, I don't know what else the key would be other than stopping Parker Navarro and getting off the field on third downs, because he'll pick up first downs with the scrambling or keeping plays alive and finding a receiver on a scramble drill. So, third and long, and then stop him from getting out of the pocket, and I think he'll do okay. But then moving the ball on third downs and then just continue to if they pick up a first down, then that's another 2 or 3 minutes they're going to have the ball and keep it away from Ohio State. So I expect them to shorten the game. I'm interested to see if Ohio State comes out with some tempo like they did against Grambling, or if they're content with just going slow pace like they did all of last year.
I think they'll have respect for Ohio University and say we need to shorten this game, and not – the deal with Grambling was they wanted as many offensive plays as they could run to get more people on the field.
That's why they took the ball, too, at the kickoff.
Yeah, it took the ball at the beginning. Yeah, it was really, really a departure for them. But as Coach said, it's great to know that if we have to shift gears and go fast at some point in the season for whatever the circumstances could be, that they've got that in their back pocket and they can do it. So.
And Steve, thank you for mentioning Ryan, because I had put his super chat in my back pocket and forgot about him. Ryan, thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Yes, Ryan, great job.
All right, Steve, what's going on at Bucknuts this week?
Looking to cover this Ohio University game with all of the fit and fervor of, the red hot sun. Just can't wait to get over there to the stadium on Saturday. Should be a festive all-day event with the OU and the Ohio State people, and just really looking forward to it. I think that, it's been 15 years since they've played, and that's too long. I think that, they should be playing on a little bit more of a regular basis. But, Ohio University's got a great football program for the Mid-American level, and we're gonna see, I think a pretty good game. I think it'll be close, maybe a touchdown, 10 points at halftime, and then Ohio State is just going to wear on them. And I don't want to say name the score in the second half, but, a 28-point win's pretty good. So if that's what it ends up.
Right, Tony, what you got this week?
Well, Steve, I'd say if Ohio wants to play Ohio State more often, they should not attack Brutus Buckeye and not receive a 15-year ban from being in the stadium. But, I just wrote about Logan George this morning. He's expected to be playing again, the Idaho State transfer who's missed the first 2 games. Ryan Day looking for him to be back in the lineup, and hoping to write about Julian Sand, and not just his accuracy, but his precision and within that accuracy this week as well. And of course, we'll have Buckeye Weekly podcasts pretty much every day this week, and then we got our bold prediction show coming up tomorrow.
And we'll be back with these 2 next week. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Mark it down, lock it in, and get on back here for Buckeyes Live. In the meantime, Tony's work, Steve's work, check it out, BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Buckeye Weekly podcast with Tony, and Bucknuts 247 with Steve. And we'll see you back here next week to preview the Big Ten. Yes.
Answering Ryan's question, we should find that out on Monday is when they should. He asked specifically when we would know for sure. We should know on Monday. So sorry for interrupting your outro, but that part of the question we didn't answer. So there you go.
The info is much more important. See you next week.